影に抱くさ。柊の輪、十重に旗絵に、雲の水筒、かの枝に紡ぐ。
日頃。Hello, and welcome to episode 8, season 2 of 3 out of 10 anime fans recommend you check out this podcast if you ever get reincarnated into another world, aka 3 out of 10 anime. This show is all about having fun conversations to rank anime based on a standard set of criteria so they can be compared, contrasted, and recommended. We discuss a different show, movie each week, so whether you're a seasoned weeb or new to the genre, we know you'll have a good time. If this is your first time... If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Here is the agenda for each episode. First, we give our first impressions in one sentence, and then we give a ranking from 1 to 10 based on our personal enjoyment. Then I will give some fun facts, and then we'll have a technical assessment based on our 4 criteria that we have set up. And then we'll wrap it all up with some comparisons and recommendations, and also announce next week's show. I'm your host, Skyler.
I'm Brett.
We are your hosts from the United States, and we each have varying opinions, tastes, and backgrounds, which should result in some interesting and relatable dialogue, no matter who you are. Joining us is a special guest this week, which is...
Bridget. Hello, I'm Bridget.
Yep, so welcome to the show. So, spoiler warning, expect some spoilers. We are going to be going into everything. If you don't want any spoilers, leave and come back after you've seen everything. So... without wasting any more time, let's go into what you guys thought about the Ancient Magus Bride. I always want to call it the Magus.
Oh, yes. I can go first. We're doing our one sentence, right?
Yep.
Okay. My one sentence, summary feelings. A truly, truly unique show that was incredibly interesting, really deep, and surprising for me. It's hard for me to say how much I enjoyed it because it was just so different. That's my feelings.
Sweet.
All right, I'll go next. For me, I have a lot of the same feelings as Brett. To me, it was a really, really cool show that I really liked. I really liked the world, but there were a lot of things that I felt were lacking and that left me wanting more, so I have complicated feelings about the show.
Sweet. So, I guess my one sentence is that this was a really cool experience to go through, and I really enjoyed the soft magic system in this, and I think this is one of the few shows where I liked the soft magic system. And to go into that just a little bit, most shows, especially modern ones, have hard magics where there's like very specific rules. There isn't that in this show.
Mm-hmm.
And normally that bothers me, but it didn't in this one as much. Okay, so with that, let's go into our personal ranking. And so I will go first because I have my ranking. And so I gave this a 7 out of 10.
All right.
And even for me, yeah, I was kind of waffling on what I would rank this because it's like in some ways I want to bump it up.
Mm-hmm.
But in otherwise it's just like, but it's not that good. So it was kind of weird for me to rank it because it wasn't that there was like, for me, things in it that were just straight up bad that would dock it like there is in other shows. It's just, it was good. It just wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel similarly.
So what, Skylar, I'm curious, what is like just a 7 show to you, like overall?
So to me, a 7 is a show that I enjoyed, but it had some problems. And then I might watch it again with some other people, like in a group, but I won't watch it again by myself.
Okay.
So that's typically what a 7 is for me. However, I watched this when it came out. And so that was like 5 years ago. And so I did have to go in and rewatch a couple of episodes. And it did kind of bring to, like, remind me about how interesting and unique this was to me. And so I might actually go back and rewatch at least a few of these episodes in their entirety.
Okay. Very cool. And just so I'm clear, in this podcast episode, we're only covering the first season, right? Because there's,
Correct.
to be clear, there's the Ancient Magus Bride, the season. Then there's 2 OVAs. There's Those Awaiting a Star, and The Boy and the Night of the Bluest Storm, I think. Hold on, let me double check the name. The Boy from the West and the Night of the Blue Storm. So we're only doing season 1 without the 2 OVAs, right?
Correct. And that's what you guys have seen. I have seen the first OVA. However, I did not know that there was a second set of OVAs that came out. Because the first OVA, I guess this is to go into a bit of my history with the show. I discovered the OVAs for the Ancient Magus Bride. And I watched those. But they like came out, like there was a long gap between when each OVA came out, like months between, if I remember correctly.
Ah, interesting.
And so I watched like the first OVA and I was like, okay, that was really interesting. That was really kind of cool. Is there another one? No, it's just this one episode. Weird. And then I just somehow came across, I was like, oh, there's another one.
Yeah.
And that happened until the OVAs finished. And then I heard that there was a season coming out. And then I watched the season as it came out. And so as I was rewatching some portions of the episodes, that's where I realized that there was 2 more OVAs that had come out that I haven't seen yet.
So to be clear, so Those Awaiting a Star is actually 3 parts. So that one OVA is 3 parts, and then the other OVA, The Boy from the West and the Night of the Blue Storm, that's a 2-part OVA. So there's 5 episodes, but it's 2 separate OVAs.
Oh wow.
Yep. And that's kind of what I was saying. Like when the OVA came out for the first one, there was a big gap in between because it wasn't a season, it wasn't a weekly release, and so there was a big time gap between the OVA releases. And yeah, I just didn't know that there was a second OVA that came out.
Cool. Sweet.
So with that, what were your enjoyment rankings?
I'll go next.
Yeah, Brett, go next.
I mentioned that I'm struggling to know how much I enjoyed this show because there were some parts that were really enjoyable, and I'll mention those in our show, but they aren't things that I get into. I'll just say it this way. This show was interesting because no other show that is this slow paced, that is this whatever, is something I would normally like, but I liked it quite a bit. And so I think I've got to give it like a 6.5 or a 7. Probably a 6.5. Like it's hard for me, okay? Like I actually almost want to watch it again and before I get another solid rating. And this is going to be really weird for anyone who's watched our show for a long time because I'm really not this way. I have an idea, I have an opinion, and I know what I think. The show is really interesting for me. So I'm just going to say somewhere between a 6 and a 7, 6.5 and 7. And so for me, the reason I'm waffling so much is a 6 is a good show, which has enough things to like keep me interested in watching, but it lacks things that get me excited, or it has enough negative things that really cause me to be disinterested. Whereas a 7 actually keeps me interested and entertained and engaged, but it has things that seriously bother me, or it doesn't really suck me in. And so there's so many things that are between those 2 scores that I'm just kind of waffling. So yeah, I'll just say a 6.5 for now.
That's fair. And to be honest, when I saw that one of the genres for it was slice of life, and I knew that you'd be watching, I was like, uh-oh.
I traditionally do not like slice of life shows. Yep. So yeah, that's fair.
All right. And then Bridget, have you decided on a score, or are you also still working through it?
I think I've decided on 1. I'm kind of in the same boat as Brett, where but for me, I think it had more things that I liked than Brett, I think. So where he gave it a 6.5, I think I'm gonna give it a 7.5, because while there were really big things that I had issues with or feel like they could have done better or differently, I still really liked a really good portion of it, and like overall I would say it was a good show. So for me, so a 7.5, and then for me an 8 is a great show I really enjoyed and may watch again, but had a few things I didn't like or would have changed that affected my enjoyment of the show. And then a 7 is a good show that I enjoyed my time watching but had some things that threw me off or that just didn't reach my hopes or expectations. So I would say it's smack dab in the middle of there. The only reason why it's not a 7 where it like says that it didn't reach my hopes or expectations is because it had enough like special things that really stood out to me that gives it like a little bit of a bump. So I'm gonna say a 7.5, and I feel good about that, I think.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Cool.
So I guess jumping to the next thing, the thing that stands out to me about this one in particular, and one of the reasons that I really enjoyed it, was the world and just the world building that went into the show.
Yeah.
What were your guys' thoughts on the world?
That was it was phenomenal in a way.
Yeah. It was interesting because it really sucked you in, and like I liked how they used so many different like magic I guess categories. Like there were mages, and there were sorcerers, and there were witches, and they all lived in the same world but they did different things. But then it also didn't really explain a lot, and so a lot of it you just kind of had to like take for granted, I guess, or just take with a grain of salt. I don't know what the phrase is to describe that, but a lot of it was just kind of like, here's this thing, that's the way it is, and we're not going to really explain it that much, but you can just believe us kind of thing. But I really liked the world, but it was just, it didn't explain, and it probably just didn't have time, I guess, to explain everything as much, which is one of my things. Like I feel like it should have been longer even.
So that's actually kind of what I was meaning by it's a soft magic system. Because hard magic systems are the ones where there's rules. And so this would be like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Full Metal Alchemist, where it's like, hey, here are the laws of magic, here's how it works, and that's it. And so they will explain like, yeah, you have to do like this magic circle, or you have to do this very specific incantation to get this specific effect. Whereas for soft magic systems, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that I can use to almost identify or define soft magic systems is either A, nothing about it is explained, or B, another way to think about it is that it's almost as if like magic itself has intelligence, has a will of its own.
Yeah, I guess they kind of did incline towards that, like it having a will of its own kind of thing. At least because like the mage's whole thing is that they possess magic themselves, but they use like magical creatures to carry out their will. So that kind of, I guess that kind of helps it be explained that it's like this more of like a wild thing that you tame rather than something that you understand completely, which I guess it makes sense. It's just the only thing that when I feel like can happen with that is that it just can kind of explain away everything, but it's like a convenience thing almost. I don't know.
No, that is the big problem with soft magic systems, is because there isn't any hard rules. It sometimes allows for very convenient ways of resolving a problem. So Lord of the Rings is actually a soft magic system. And so some of the critiques against, Lord of the Rings and how that kind of works is like, oh yeah, Gandalf just always had a spell for what was needed.
Yeah. True.
So yeah, some of my thoughts, like I love the conversation that's happening because it really kind of bleeds into two of the big things I wanted to talk about. So the first thing, Skyler, I wanted to mention is I think the world building was amazing. And when I say to a point, like I'll get what I mean to a point, but I think the world building was really phenomenal on multiple levels. I think like the design of all of the different creatures was so cool. Yes. And new ones kept showing up throughout the whole show. They didn't just use the same four or five models like is so common in other shows. So that was really neat. And the fact that a lot of them were based on European mythology and animals that live in that part of the world, like the axolotl and some of those other things. So like that was really cool. Bridget and I noticed, like, as we were watching the show, we watched it together. We would point out like, oh, that's like that part of mythology or that part of mythology, and then the part where the pregnant lady was on the centaur, and Bridget made some kind of joke, and I was like, yeah, that's Mary and Jesus, and she was like, oh, duh. But in a very
the
like
Christmas episode, yeah.
Yeah, the Christmas episode. It was Mary and Jesus, and Joseph was the centaur, I guess. So anyway, there was just like a lot of really, really intricate and interesting nods to things. And that kind of leads into kind of my other thought, like you were mentioning the magic system. So I'll mention like, I didn't have as much of a problem with it as I do with other soft magic systems, but I still feel like this show suffered from something interesting. And I don't say this for any shows. Most of the time I say that show was too long. They could have done more with less. They should have had fewer episodes. They should have focused more. They should have whatever. This show, I think it should have been longer.
That's what I was saying.
Because
it should.
The whole vibe they were going with the pacing, the slow, drawn out, but something that the show constantly suffered from was, I believe, the dangerous line that you walk between having a soft magic system and failing to explain critical components of the world that make it comprehensive. And so, like, there were multiple times, particularly in the ending of the show, which I actually think was the worst part of this entire show. I think the ending of the show was trash. And I feel really bad they ended the show the way they did. I need to watch the OVAs apparently, but just the series, I think it was a big disservice to a great show, because all of the key things that led to Cardophilius sleeping in a well and Chisei being alive and all of these things, it wasn't just soft magic system. It was completely unexplained, ambiguous, vague. I recognize the show is trying to do a lot of like leaving up to the viewer's interpretation, and I respect that, but I think in a lot of times they went too far and they left critical things completely unexplained in a way that was really, really painful, and not like it felt less artistic and like, oh yeah, I could see how the artist could be doing this, and it was more just like, oh, that was just written really poorly.
Yeah,
so
just bad storytelling.
that I think there were just a lot of bad storytelling parts, despite the fact that there was a soft magic system, because the soft magic system didn't bother me. It's when they combined the soft magic system with poor storytelling. So those were two of the points I wanted to make about the world building and the soft magic system, because they were on my mind watching the show.
Okay.
Yeah. But there was a lot of stuff to like. Yeah, because my big things were the ending. Like, I was on board. I was going to give it like a 9 out of 10 up until like 5 or 6 episodes from the end. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And yeah, it was kind of just like, it just felt rushed. Like they were just like trying to cram it all in. But the things I liked were they did a great job with, again, like with the creatures, with the world. I liked the music in it. I liked the characters, even like the side characters, that they would kind of pop in and out, here and there. I liked seeing them. It was a really good story overall that just suffered from some bad storytelling.
Yeah, and I would actually agree with that, where the last arc was the one that was kind of like interesting compared to the rest of it.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it just kind of seemed, well, it didn't really come out of nowhere, but it was a sudden shift compared to what they had been doing.
Yeah.
And then it maintained that for a longer period of time, so it was just like, oh, interesting, huh? And so I do wonder how much of that is because they were getting towards the end of the season and they wanted to do something to hype it up. And this is something unfortunate that is fairly common in some animes.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll try to ramp it up at the very end.
I'm gonna do something way out of my typical character, and I'm gonna disagree with Bridget and say I don't think they were trying to cram too much in. I think they just tried to do what they had too fast.
That's kind of what I guess that's what I meant. Saying
Yeah,
cramming too much in didn't really. That's not what it was.
Because I
They
think
just
the
had to
pacing
finish.
of this show was actually like really fantastic. Like it is supposed to be a slow, meandering show. Like that's what it's supposed to be. Kind of like Kino's Journey in a way. Like get ready for my recommendation for Kino's Journey at the end of this episode. And so I feel like if the show was 33% longer, like let's say this was 3 seasons, they give a little more time into maybe some of the explanation of things. Like Chisei, they didn't have to cram Cardophilius' backstory and Chisei's backstory into one episode.
Yeah, it was a lot.
They could have taken some more time to bring Cardophilius back into the story, because what happened is he was gone, like just disappeared. Oh, the last time I saw you was in the graveyard. And now, last episode of the show, I'm all of a sudden the most important thing of the whole series. Surprise! And I'm going to get absolutely no time, no explanation, no service. Like, yeah, I feel like if the show was 33% longer, I know that's hard with like budget and everything, but I feel like that really would have made it feel a lot better.
I do agree with that, but I will say one thing is that the first OVA is actually about child Chisei.
See, that doesn't actually make me feel good.
Yeah, I actually felt.
That doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah, her story. I felt her story was told just fine in the flashbacks. Actually, that's not the part that I wish that they would have spent more time, because like I got the message, from her traumatic childhood and all of the stuff that she went through. Like I got the gist of that from the episode where she was sleeping while he was like operating on her arm or whatever, and then she relived all of that. So that wasn't where I thought it was needing help.
Yeah, and so a lot of those flashbacks are to the OVAs.
I see.
Or the OVAs are expansions of the flashbacks.
I guess.
However you want to flavor it, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I do agree with. I think that unfortunately this suffered from just the syndrome of the season had a very specific amount of episodes, and they had to start and stop an arc before they should have.
Yeah. I just really wish I knew what the storyboarding process was like for this show in particular, because if you were to like chart out, and like I worked in business intelligence, so my brain automatically goes to like, how would I visualize this data set? If you were to like visualize the amount of like a plot story that, and when I say a plot, I mean specifically with the characters Cardophilius, Chisei, and Elias. If you were to like chart out the density of the story moments between the three of them throughout the show, you would have like these little spikes, but then the last 3 episodes would just be these mountains that just dwarf all of the other, data, with very, very small moments as exception. And so I'm just wondering, like, who thought that was like a good idea? You know what I mean? Like, who was it that was like, yeah, let's do that?
Well, actually, so this is an interesting conversation, because one thing I've kind of thought about recently is it seems like we are getting more and more sequels to animes nowadays than there ever have been.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder how much of like that shift has happened, where it was like maybe when they were doing the storyboard, it's like, look, this is all we've got. Because most anime, they only get the 1 season unless they go just mega popular.
But they could have like, that's what I mean. They could have put more story earlier on. They could have divided it differently so it didn't feel so rushed at the end.
I agree.
That's what
but I wonder how much that affected that decision is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Fair.
Yeah, it was interesting because as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about all of the different big parts of the story, right? Because you have, like, I feel like the show would hint at like something that felt like it was going to be really important later, but then it kind of just like for example, here are the big ones that could come to my mind. One, of course, is Chise and Elias's relationship. That's a big thing that was kind of like ongoing during the show. Then there's Elias's whole backstory and what he is and why does everyone scoring at him, and like why does everyone say that he's like a failed thing. Like, what even is he? Where did he come from? They like hint at that with his backstory, but never get into it, and like all of that. And then there's also the Ashen Eye guy. Like, what's his deal? What's his goal? Where does he come from? He just shows up and messes things up and then leaves. And then at the end, he's like also a bad guy. So like, there's just, it feels like they're like taking all these big bites of the story cake, but then they can't finish chewing it, and so then they just like choke on it or spit it out, and then you never get to really figure out what all that was about. Like, I thought that there was going to be some big thing at the end with that Ashen Eye guy, because he kept popping up, and it seemed like he would help the story along, like he would help their relationship. All the times that he showed up were ended up in moments when their relationship would change or get better or grow or something. So I thought that there was something to do, but it just turns out he was just there to mess things around. So it's just like there was a lot of things. It was overly ambitious, but like with the time that they had and the things they chose to focus on, it didn't ever like go anywhere or go as far as I thought. Because I do think that like Elias and Chise's relationship did change and evolve and grow in a good way, definitely from the start to finish, but it just seemed like it never really got quite to where I thought it was going to, with everything that was like being hinted. And same with like his backstory and stuff like that. So that's kind of like, I feel like was my main problem with the show, and that kind of lends itself to the ending too. Like, I feel like the bad ending was a product of that, like too much going on while also still feeling slow.
Yeah.
It is interesting, a weird paradox of a show.
And I think that's why it's so hard to give it a ranking.
Mm-hmm.
Is because it does something so well, but then there's all these other parts of it that's just like, but what's going on there? I haven't figured out what's going on there yet.
Yeah.
And like, to be clear, I'm okay with that a lot of the time if that's what the artist intends. But I think there's that dangerous line you walk of poor storytelling versus giving enough to satisfy and explain so that people can finish interpreting it. Because, like, okay, here's a good analogy. Bridget, by the way, I loved your analogy of spitting it out and swallowing it. That was perfect. So my analogy is this: like, if you paint a picture, right, and you paint, or if you give someone directions, let's not use a painting because that's super interpretive. Let's use directions. Let's say that I'm like, all right, Skylar, you're gonna go north. As you go north, you're going to work your way toward a really big building that has a Wells Fargo on it. It's going to be near there. There's going to be some loud music. You probably get like the general gist of it. Like, you kind of have an idea of like where you're going, and you can like figure out your way. You might take some different roads. You might, whatever. But if I was just like, all right, Skylar, I'll meet you in Salt Lake. Go north. Big, loud. You'd be like, there's so much to interpret, you wouldn't really know how to arrive at any meaningful conclusion, which is where I feel like the show had some points that were like phenomenally poignant in like their power of like what they were trying to communicate, and then other times when they were trying to leave it up to your interpretation, it was so obtuse that like you could arrive at a million different conclusions, and it just isn't satisfying. You feel lost. You don't feel like you participated in something. You feel like you were given a map that wasn't complete. Anyway,
I agree with that. Yeah. And actually, to build off of that, I would say that at some points where that was kind of the idea of like, oh yeah, just go north. a part of the show was about the journey, was about just
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
exploration and just the novelty of just like, what is this thing?
Yeah, especially at the beginning, because it almost felt like we were learning along with her. But then after a certain point, it was like she knows more about what's going on than I do, but it's not communicated, you know? So,
Yes, and I
Yeah.
actually do agree that that's where that breakdown I think starts to happen.
yeah.
Is because she makes the sleeping aid tincture, and so she's like, oh, I have to use this specific herb, and I have to do this thing, and
I
And so we're
mentioned that to Bridget when
Yeah,
that episode
we-
came up, didn't I?
Yeah, we literally talked about that like turning point, like, okay, well now she knows what's going on, but we don't anymore, and so how long is this gonna go on for? And it turns out it was until the end of the show. So
So yes, I do agree that that's kind of when that broke, and I do agree where it's like that kind of ruined what it was that they were going for.
yeah.
Because even for the wands, when she had to create the wand, it was like, oh, this is what the different woods are for. Then at least when there's like something that comes up and it involves wood again, and she chooses what it is, then at least we have like, oh yeah, I remember that there was something to do with wood. I may not remember all the details, but I remember it was a thing. But then you're starting to toe a different line of like, okay, well, what's too much information versus something else? Because then you start going away from a soft magic system into it's like you have this very, very strict, defined set of rules on how to do things.
Yeah.
So it's a very fine line to toe.
Yeah. Can I say something that I loved about this show?
Go for it.
This show had some of the very best conversations of any show I've ever seen. Specifically, where Chisei was talking to Nevin for the
Yes.
first time in the in-between world with the platforms and the bridges. That conversation and the things Nevin said to her was like literally breathtaking. It was so profound and deep and pointed, and holy smokes, that it was incredible. Like that was one of those moments I was like, wow, this moment just did what all the other anime that are trying to be deep and have a meaningful philosophical discussion between characters, all better than any other show I've ever seen. Like
Yeah,
truly, that one conversation was
Yep.
And that's where I had a hard time giving this my enjoyment ranking, is because like for a soft magic system, I think they did great. And also just like with the conversations and how they were able to go about those conversations, again, it's amazing. But I think that there were just other parts that, kind of like we mentioned, that were just so lackluster that it dulled it. That it took those gems and just put a film over it.
Yeah. But yeah, it really did. It handled a lot of like difficult topics really well, and like, you know, about like overcoming her past, and like in the episode that Brett's talking about, I just looked it up to make sure. It's episode 12 called Better to Ask the Way Than Go Astray is the one that we were talking about, where he like tells her that he's grateful to her mother for choosing to protect her and not kill her, and like that because then she wouldn't have been able to meet all the people in her future, and like you don't have to rely on your past to dictate your future and stuff like that. I got really emotional because it was a really cool message. And then it comes back at the end when she's confronting her mom in her mental, you know, flower field or whatever, where she she's like, I can't forgive you, but I can like thank you for teaching me, you know, how to move on, kind of thing. So it like she tells her mom the same thing that Nevin told her at the beginning, like she took it with her. So that was such a cool moment. Like Brett said, it was one of my favorite conversations in an anime I've ever seen, because it like really sat with me. And that was one of the reasons like why I gave it a 7.5 instead of a 7, is because like, yes, it had like all this stuff that I thought, you know, I didn't like or could have done better, but there were certain moments like that where I was like, that's really special, that like deserves to give it a bump up. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, that particular conversation and dialogue, even though it was 5 years ago, like every now and then it'll just kind of pop up. It's just like, food for thought.
Mm-hmm.
I have one last big thing I wanna mention.
I was gonna ask for quick points.
Yeah, this will be my last big thing. This show is not a romance. I'm just gonna say it. The show is not a romance. The show is a drama. Mm-hmm. It is a drama. So I thought it was gonna be a romance. Because whenever I look up like lists of like best romance anime to watch and blah blah blah, like Ancient Magus Bride shows up. So if anyone's listening to this and hasn't watched it yet and you want to go watch it, do not go in expecting a romance. Go in expecting a drama where a romance happens to exist. Once I made that leap in my head, which was actually not hard to make because the show clearly was doing that. It was much easier to like sit and sink into the pace that the show wanted you to exist within, because you weren't waiting for romantic moments to happen. Because that's what a romance is like you're waiting for those romantic moments, but I was never waiting for those to happen here. And so that's the first thing. Second thing, I'm glad it wasn't a romance.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm relieved it wasn't, because it was gonna be weird if it was.
It would be, if this was a romance and they made it a romance, it would have been, I would have not liked the show at all, because I think what they did do was far more beautiful. If it was a romance, first of all, I'm never going to enjoy a romance that's based off of slavery and
Yeah, I was gonna say,
and trying to marry a minor. That's just not my kind of thing.
It sets the tone when he buys her and then calls her his puppy. So I'm like, I hope this doesn't become a romance, because that's not how you want to start a romance, I think.
Yeah.
Usually.
But what ended up happening, if I was going to say the genres that this show is, it is a drama, fantasy, coming of age slice of life. This is a coming of age story. This is Elias, who is ancient because he's existed for who knows how long, but he's literally a child. He's 12 years old basically, right? He doesn't understand the complexity of what the emotion jealousy is or means. He doesn't know what love is. He doesn't even really, like, he knows anger because he felt it once, but like he doesn't even know really what emotions are. And Chisei is super emotionally stunted because of her trauma. And so really this was a story of two young people with traumatic lives trying to grow up and learn how to process their emotions together.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that Elias was just a child, when he said things like, "You're my puppy," or like, "I'm glad I bought you," it wasn't necessarily because he was being a creepy guy. It was because he didn't even understand what he was saying meant. And so seeing how they handled the romance aspects of the show, I think was actually really cool. But this is not a romance anime. And I'm glad it's not. But the romance elements they had, I think they handled well, even though if some of them still kind of bothered me a little bit, like overall, I think they handled that really, really well in a really cool way.
Yeah, it was really nuanced. Like their relationship was really nuanced.
Yeah. And even the way I have to keep going. Even the way they like acted within their relationship was so unique. I said in my first sentence that this is a unique show. Like, there were a lot of unique things about this show, particularly how the characters interacted physically and the things they said to each other. Even in the romance moments, it was very different from other anime, which was really, really cool.
Yeah.
They never even said "I love you" in the whole series, which I think was really great. Because they didn't have the emotional capacity to understand that yet. And so they didn't say it. And so I thought that was really, really nice. And then also, yeah, go ahead.
Well, the other thing that I would add on to that is actions speak louder than words, and the trust that they had in each other. And they demonstrated that at times, both how it faded and how it grew.
Oh man, with
both.
the exception of the horrible ending, everything about the ending was just terrible. Elias suddenly deciding to sacrifice a random girl, and then she gets mad at him, and then she forgives him like the next episode. Oh man, the ending of this show is truly just a travesty on so many levels.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Because I agree with you, Skylar. The trust they had and the trust they slowly developed. The ending of the show just completely betrayed all of the like concepts they built to that point. Like not betrayed, but just it's not good.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, yeah. So like yeah, really unique. There was really cool, very tender moments of physical intimacy, like a touch on the nose or holding hands. But not in like a, oh my gosh, we're going to hold hands way, just in a supernatural, mature way that was really, really nice. Like, I really enjoyed those parts of the show.
Actually, now that you've brought that up, I think that is a part that I enjoyed, which is where when it came up, and they weren't extremely shy about it. It wasn't like this whole thing that anime so commonly do where they beat around the bush for as long as possible.
Yeah.
They just went for it when it was needed.
Yeah, it felt very natural.
Yeah, it wasn't even like a romance thing. It was more of like a comforting thing.
Yeah, just a
Mature,
just a relationship. Yeah, yeah. So it was cool. Yeah. Bridget actually experienced a pretty dramatic shift in psyche during the show because when it started out, she really hated. Like, do you want to talk about your transformation through the show?
Oh, well, I didn't know what to expect. So at the beginning when it was, because when Brett, like, I mean, and he didn't know either, but he was like, yeah, this was on a list of, romance shows to watch. And I hear it's kind of like a Beauty and the Beast type thing. And so I was like, okay, not my favorite tale, but okay. And so then we start watching it and it starts with her being sold at an auction. I was like, here we go. And then I was very, pleasantly surprised to be like, okay, thank goodness, it's not a Beauty and the Beast thing at all. And why is it on a romance list anyway? So yeah, that's I don't remember when it was that I realized that, but we got there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Any final points?
The fan service on the show was friggin'
off the hook.
Off the hook. It was everywhere in like a really why it was so heavy in this show. I have no idea, but it was there everywhere.
It was really only the vampire lady and the fairy queen.
Those were the two most egregious, but basically all of the fictional female characters were pretty fan servicey.
I mean, those are the only ones I can think of. All of the
I've been going and collecting screenshots for Skylar of the show on Google while we're recording the podcast. So when he's editing, he can put them in. And I'm like, oh yeah, there was a lot of fan service in this show.
That's weird, because I don't remember there being that many compared to other shows. Those two characters are the only ones I can think of.
Gotta love some good boob physics. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Well, that'd be
they
down
are
to
magic.
Which studio
so
there.
They are magic, so they can get away with physics.
Well, to transition a little bit into the fun facts. So this is actually no. It makes sense. It's a good transition.
Okay, I'm here. I'm here.
Where this is based off of a manga. I think this is her first manga that she's made or that she's written. That this is based off of.
That's cool. It's a pretty good one for your first ever manga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember, and I was trying to dig it back up, but I think that for I think it was the music composer, that for the anime, this was their first show that they'd written music for.
Wow.
Wow.
So two
Impressive.
first timers on the Ancient Magus Bride. Magus Bride. I keep on wanting to say Magus.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
impressive.
So I don't know how much of that is affected by that, but yeah, that
Either
is one
way.
thing to be aware of going into it.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So then,
I like
yeah, so
the music.
there is actually another fun fact. There is a second season that will be coming out for this,
Mhm.
and it is currently slated for April of 2023.
Oh, nice. Cool. I'll
And
watch
then the
it.
only other facts that I could really find is that, yes, this is confirmed a drama because it won the best Crunchyroll drama for 2017.
Nice.
Mm. I actually, you know what's funny, Skylar? Right before we started recording this episode, I went into our anime spreadsheet and I saw that it was romance and I changed it to drama.
I saw you change, and I was like, yeah, that's probably correct.
Good job. Good job.
Yep. So it won the Crunchyroll Best Drama 2017. And then for MAL rankings, it is MAL rank, or My Anime List, rank 495, so 495, which is respectable considering the amount of anime out there, but not noteworthy.
Yeah.
And then the popularity is semi-similar. It's 179. So good,
Yeah.
but not like really high up there.
Yeah.
It's kind
Not
of,
like some of the other shows that we reviewed.
it's kind of impressive to me for what it is, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. And so with that, we shall now move into the technical assessment of the show. And so for those who are new, we rate the anime based on 4 different rubrics, and that is going to be art, story, characters, and delivery.
And Skylar,
Now,
where can they find the rubric if they want to look at it?
Good call out. So they can find this on our website, 310anime310anime.com. And so you can go there, you can find both our enjoyment rubrics and our technical rubrics if you want to follow along and see how much you agree with or disagree with what we give the show.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. So let me pull up my sheet real quick. And then we will dive into art. And then unlike the enjoyment, kind of like I mentioned before, we all agree on one score for the technical assessment. And so there won't be only 3 different technical assessments. There will only be 1 technical score. And so to launch into it, we will go into art. Now this includes the music, animation, sound design, art, and the opening and ending songs. 1, terrible, the composition is frequently ugly, messy, disjointed, bland, boring, repetitive, and poorly done. Whereas a 5, exceptional, the composition is always beautiful, cohesive, fitting, engaging, notable, ambitious, and expertly performed.
I'm going to start with the music because Bridget brought it up. I think the music for this show was really good. Not just was it really good, but it was also unique because it was very, like, there was a specific time period they were trying to portray for most of the show. Then like sometimes you go to a modern city and it kind of threw you off a little bit. But like in the European countryside in a cottage, so there was a lot of recorder, there was a lot of flute, there were some strings, there was choir, like there was a lot of very like thematic instrumentation within the arrangement, and I, you know, that really stood out to me as being really nice. It actually reminded me of another show that I'm gonna use for one of my recommendations. I'm probably gonna steal it from Bridget.
No,
So
I was about to say, are you going to steal it from me?
so I'm not gonna say it. I'll wait till the end of the episode for us to fight over it there. But
Okay.
yeah, I thought the
There might be a lot of
instrumentation
shows that we're fighting over.
was really good. So
Yeah, I liked the music too. And it didn't feel, there were some, I mean, obviously most anime, unless you're Violet Evergarden, has certain things that you repeat for certain scenarios and stuff. But this one had enough of them that they didn't pop up often enough for me to be like, oh, here's that theme again. They did have, it was repeating ones, but that's like what you would expect. I will say that I hated the recorder. It was out of tune and I never want to hear it again in my life. It would like, I'm trying to remember it it would always like come up while they were just like doing stuff around the house, or like it was like a montage of her learning magic or something, and it was this awful squeaky sounding thing, and I hate it.
I will say, when I was researching fun facts, kind of like Violet Evergarden, this one had a decent soundtrack
Yeah.
for the show.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I said,
It's
it
not
was
Violet
varied.
Evergarden level,
Yeah, it was varied.
but it's still good.
Yeah, it is good. And I think one of the music elements that was used to perfection in this show was the use of the dissonant piano.
Yes, the scary music
There were so many moments that was just
had great scary
a-
music.
one continuous ding, ding, but it was, you could tell that it was just like
Yeah, it
two
had
notes,
pitch
a half
bend.
step apart, just played right by each other, or a pitch bend.
Yeah, it was a pitch bend, like where you'd play it on a keyboard and then there's the little wheel that toggles it. That's
Man.
what it was, and it was very creepy. It
So
was very
good. So good.
I'll have to take your word on the technique for that.
It
Yeah.
was
I
very
was-
creepy.
I wasn't sure if it was that or if it was playing two half steps right next to each other at the same time.
It was probably both.
So, but yeah, like really good,
it
and not
excelled with the
overused
creepy
either.
music.
Not overused either. Like they used it really when they needed to, and they didn't overuse it. Which, when you have something cool as a musician or as a composer, it's really tempting to be like, "Oh man, that thing we did was real cool. Oh, creepy moment. Put in this cool thing we did." So I think they didn't
Yeah.
overdo it, which was really neat. So
The thing is that doesn't just apply to musicians, that's everybody.
true.
The too
True,
much
true, true.
gene.
Yeah. Or even just like, hey, I did this really cool effect. Oh, hey, I have a chance to do it again. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
For the art, I feel like the art was normal.
I would say normal on the good side.
Yeah, I feel
Like
like
this was above.
yeah. I feel like the design was good, but then like just like the art style, I guess, was like normal anime. Like, for example, all the different little creatures, I liked all the designs, and like Elias's design, I liked all the designs, but it's like the art style, like the way that it was drawn was like normal, I guess, for me. Or like watching anime, it's like what anime looks like. But the
I
elements
think
were cool.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think that there were enough moments where I was like, "Oh yeah, that's really neat. That's ambitious. That's really cool what they did there." But there were just as many times for me where I was like, "Ooh, that was a little weird. That was a little janky." Like,
Yeah, it had some
Yeah.
funky parts.
and I'm not just talking about when they would cut into chibi mode. Like, I think that was cute a lot of the time. I do think they overused that. I'll be honest. Like, they would be having a really serious moment, and then it would just cut. And it got to the point by the end of the show, and I think I'm going to bring this up in the edit, but it got to the point in the show where I was like, here it comes. Oh, the tension is building. Yep, there it is. Like, I think they overused that comedic relief, and it got stale. That being said, for me, I agree with Bridget. I think the art had some really notable moments in both directions. So I'm like, for me, if I was going to propose a score for just the like animation, I do like a 3. I think the music deserves a call out. I think the design deserves a call out. So like, I'd go up to like a 4. I think at the most. I think it was
4
good.
is about the range that I'd be looking for in general in art.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say 4 also. Also, I'm gonna give a shout out to the openings and endings. I liked the first half opening. The second half opening, I did not like the singer. She was bad. I will say it. I am sorry. But I liked both of the endings.
Yeah.
The ending
Okay.
credits or whatever. Outros. But yeah, I think 4 is good.
All right, locking it in at a 4.
That was so easy.
I was honestly expecting a little bit of a fight up, but that works. All right, now for story, which includes plot devices, tone, mood, continuity, world building, pacing, rules and systems, and tropes. Starting with a 1, terrible. The story was frequently nonsensical, inconsistent, boring, confusing, ambiguous, unoriginal, and disappointing. Whereas a 5, exceptional, the story was always consistent, well-paced, comprehensible, consummate, on point with mood and tone, and unique. This is another one where it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I feel like, I'm just going to say this, I feel like the majority of gripes we had with this show was in this category.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I do think it was a unique story. That's like when I'm looking at the name, like the adjectives, the one that matches the most is unique, and then the rest of them are like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that just really comes down to just the plot and how the plot was paced out.
Yeah.
How it was delivered
Yeah.
Yeah.
as well.
Hey, we
Yeah.
have a whole section for delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like the things are, I would say that the tone and mood was usually really good. The world building was good. But then everything else like has good moments and bad moments that kind of like wiggle between the two. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this because I would say that the world building is exceptional, would be in the 5.
Mm-hmm.
Rules and systems, because it's a soft magic system, and kind of like
Yeah.
we mentioned in the enjoyment section about the break where we no longer could follow along as well, it would kind of take a hit there for me.
Yeah.
Pacing, we've kind of addressed the pacing issue. And then I guess for the plot itself, it really suffers from the pacing and not having enough time to breathe on its own.
Mm.
I'll add in that I'm tracking with you on all except one point, and it's world building. My gut reaction is to also give the world building just like, 2 thumbs way up. But then I remember that a lot of the issues we had with the way that the world worked is part of the world building. And it's not just the rules and systems, it's also the world itself. So like, I don't think I could go that high on that piece, although I do think of all the pieces, it's the strongest. But I think there are some parts of the world building that are particularly troublesome.
Yeah.
I guess where I would disagree is that the world building, so it's like they're doing it, which means that it exists as a part of this world and is a thing that we can understand and track, even if we haven't been given the explanation. However, because we haven't been given the explanation, we don't know the rules behind it. We don't know why it's doing what it does.
Yeah.
But it is still incorporated into the world and is a part of how the world works, even if it isn't explained.
Yeah. Fair.
Yeah.
Because, to that point, it's like, I don't expect to have every advertisement explained. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Bridget.
Oh, I was just gonna put forth that maybe it would be like it's almost like there's really good stuff and there's really bad stuff, and it almost kind of makes you go in the middle.
Yeah.
So like the number that's in my head is like a 3.5.
That was my number 2, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, we're so in sync. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Man, this is a heated argument right here.
No, I think it's a 3.5.
I was gonna say it first. It's okay. We'll start fighting when it
Hey,
gets
bring
to the.
it up.
Yeah, it'll
Yep,
start
locking it in,
fighting
3.5.
when we get to the recommendations, because we'll be fighting over that. If you're here to see, shots being fired, just wait till then. I guess this is not the time where that's gonna happen.
Well, then I'll put up a preemptive rule that we'll have to follow one at a time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm the worst offender of that, so I will do my best to do one at a
I'm the
time.
guest, so I get to go first.
Hey, I'm technically a guest on this episode too.
Okay.
Skyler's the host. All right.
Yeah, okay, Skylar, you
All
have
right.
to pick between us, whoever is your favorite. gets
Man,
to
what
go
a thing to
first.
argue over.
Pick whoever has the best facial hair.
No.
That'd be me.
You owned.
Countless women would agree to disagree.
Oh. Oh.
Alrighty,
Oh, geez.
moving on
Jeez.
to our third subject, characters. This includes design, development, motivation, action, inaction, relationships, and personality. Starting with 1, terrible. The characters are frequently unreasonable, confusing, inconsistent, unreasonably static, dynamic, and annoying. Whereas 5, exceptional. The characters are always understandable, consistent, reasonable, adequately static, dynamic, and relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Reading that criteria, they did really well with the characters.
Yeah.
I think with some characters they did exceptional with as well. I agree.
Yeah. Especially, the main characters are ones that come to mind. Like, for example, Elias is not reasonable, but he's not supposed to be. So they did a good job with him. Like, because, like, there are times when I was, like, really annoyed, with him, but you were supposed to be annoyed. And then he, like, got better. So that's, like, when we say reasonable, that's, like, not what we mean. It's, like, reasonable for the character.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
I think they did good, too. And also the character design goes into that, too, which I think was a good thing. It was kind of, we overlapped it in art a little bit, but
Yeah.
the design was good.
I was gonna say that I think Chisei is just a phenomenal character for sure. I even think Ruth is a great character too, the dog character. Even though I feel like his character growth was just like all in the beginning, and then he was just demoted to a plot a convenience plot armor character, which I always hate.
Yeah.
For the rest of the show, even in moments when he could have grown and they could have focused on him a little bit, like when Chisei was almost dying, he had like one moment where he was like, oh man, I'm moping because I feel so helpless, and then Elias and Chisei walked up behind him and was like, oh, it's okay buddy, feel better, and then that was it. It like
True.
that was all. So like I feel like he really had a disservice into the amount of character development he had. But then there's also some characters that I think were just flat out bad or terrible, right? We talked about Keen Eye guy, 3-Eye, Renengon, Madara
Ashen Eye.
Uchiha in his final form.
Ugh.
By the way, check out our podcast last week on Naruto Shippuden with 2 special guests, Tyler and Sony. Because
two-part
literally
episode.
two-part Naruto and the Naruto Shippuden. The reason I bring that up is because the guy had 3 eyes that were all swirly. That's the Renengon from Naruto, and that Madara Uchiha had 3 eyes by the end. Anyway,
Ashen Eye was a bad character.
Ashen Eye. Yeah, thank you.
He was bad. I did not like him.
I do have to admit that when you were talking about Ashen Eye, Cotton Eye Joe briefly swayed me.
Hey, I'm wearing a bolo tie, so I mean it was for Elias, but I guess country works too.
I did see the bullet. I was like, oh, nice touch for this one.
Yeah, I didn't have a green or blue pendant to go in the middle. Which, by the way, that whole character, the teacher lady, yeah, super unexplained. No idea what's going on there. No idea what the pendant was. No idea why she was impactful on Elias. No idea.
Oh.
Like she was supposed to be a meaningful cast member, and like Bridget said, was hoping she would get callbacks throughout the show. Nothing.
The one thing I will call out is that this is unfinished. Like they are coming out with the second season. But where I haven't read the manga, I can't comment on how many of these threads get tied up. In fact, I don't even know if the manga's finished, actually.
Also, yes, but they didn't know they were going to get a second season.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe, I'll have to double check this, fact check it. I don't believe the second section of the manga was even written by the time they made the anime. So, because I think the second section came out in September of this year, which is a month ago from date of recording. So, I don't think we can give them a pass for that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
In fact, I just looked it up. We cannot give them a pass for that. The second section of the anime or the manga didn't even come out until this year. so they didn't even know that it was unfinished. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, back to characters. I think a strong point was the character relationships. That's one of the little subcategories. I think the relationships were good. I like how a lot of the I guess like magical characters or whatever, they started out with an interest in Chise because of her like what she was, but they ended up actually forming an actual relationship with her where they actually cared about her as a person. For example, the sorcerer people, the blonde lady and the guy with the scar, also the fairies that were also in that same category. Like a lot of the characters were interested in her because she was like a unique magical user, but by the end of it, like they had a subplot relationship growth that even though it wasn't shown, like you could track that it was happening because each time they would turn up, their relationship would be a little bit different. So I thought that was neat because a lot of the basically every single character that she is introduced to pretty much from the beginning sees her as just like an interesting specimen, but then by the end of the show sees her as like a real human being, even from the beginning with Elias buying her because he wanted to study her and like make her his apprentice or whatever. But then they like pretty much, I can't think of any character that didn't see her that way that ended up seeing her as like a human being by the end of the show. So as far as that goes under relationships in the subcategory of characters, I feel like that was a really strong one that didn't even feel like it was trying that hard.
Can we just I see where you're coming from with those points, Bridget. I like what you had to say there. I agree. I know that, so just for some context, Slaybeggy is an actual part of fairy tale colloquialism. Like it's an actual thing that exists. They didn't just make it up for the show. However, it's one of the most infrequently used things in all of fairy tales. So can we just remove half a point for the fact that someone decided to use it in a serious context in an anime?
Yeah,
like,
I was so confused.
What a horrible name for a entity. You could have called it anything and you chose one of the weirdest, wackiest, dumbest things. Like you just went to the fairy tale encyclopedia and was like, hey, no one uses this anywhere. Maybe because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it confused me from the moment it was used. I'm like, am I supposed to know what that means? Why? What? I was confused by the word. It's like how in freaking To Your Eternity they decide to call the horrific alien monster that, you know, possesses people, they decided to call it knockers. I don't know what it is with anime and like naming things, but it's like, I don't know, it's an issue. It's silly. Yeah,
Anyway.
Slaybeggy was a silly word to me and I couldn't take it seriously the whole time. And maybe that's just me being silly, but I also agree that it was a dumb choice.
And I bring that up comically, but to bring it back to a serious technical point, I would say that to Skyler's comment from the beginning of the episode, a soft magic system where you start to use it as an explanation for everything, I do think that part of Chise's character was just a little too much on the, because she's a Slaybeggy, this stuff happens. It got to the point where it was pretty overused and almost egregious, I would say, to a point where it was like, okay, we get it, she's a slave beggar, so what's gonna happen next? Like, is the fact that she got literally stabbed through the heart and lived with zero explanation whatsoever because she's a slave beggar? Who knows? I do think that part of the, maybe it's the world building, maybe it's the character. I think that was a little too much in this.
I think I would put that personally into story and plot devices.
Yeah, fair.
Because it's the thing that drives the plot.
Yeah, but it's also an inherent part of her character's design,
Yeah.
right?
It's like both.
Like if you go to the fandom Wikipedia page for the Ancient Magus Bride, the description of her character is what she is. Like, that's her character. Anyway, so Skylar, what are you thinking? Lead us through.
Okay, I'm thinking somewhere between, I'm going to ballpark it into a 3.5.
Yeah, I was thinking like a 4. I mean, I talked a lot of crap on a lot of parts of the characters, but I do think that the majority of the characters were good. I could easily go to a 3.5. I'm anywhere from a 3.5 to a 4.
That's about the same range, which is why I said ballpark
Yeah.
3.5.
I was gonna say a 4. I was mainly thinking about like the design, the relationships, the motivations, things like that. I guess I'm kind of with Skylar, where the slave beggy thing kind of is more of a story thing to me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Fair.
I was gonna say a 4 for the characters.
Okay.
But I could do a
If
3.5.
here's the thing. Okay, I have a.
Uh-oh.
Okay, look. I know that we're all remembering a lot of stuff of the show very fondly. The ending of the show was literally terrible.
That doesn't have to do with the
I think-
characters.
No. Here's my point. If we give a 4 to characters, I think that we do need to go back to story and make some adjustments, because we've brought up things in characters that belong in story that are big detractors.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
I do think characters deserves a 4. However, we brought up some things that I'm like, hey, maybe we should go back to story because there's some pieces we uncovered. And honestly, I don't think we talked enough about the ending of the show. We all said that we hated it, but truly the ending of the show was technically atrocious. And I actually don't think we covered it really that well.
But we also have delivery left, and I feel like that's
True.
also a delivery thing. Because it's like the edit, like they didn't fit everything in. Is that an edit thing or a story thing? Like not being able to.
It's both.
It's both, but I guess that for me, even including the ending, I would give it a 3.5.
I don't
with
think
the
I.
story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If it was. The reason I would say I couldn't is because the most important parts of the whole show happened in those last 4 or 5 episodes. And they were also the worst. Like, they were the worst part of the whole story, but they were the most important parts of the whole story. Like, literally the whole show led up to Chisei and Joshua. Was that his real name?
Joseph.
Joseph.
Was the body that he.
The body
went
that was
to.
overtaken by Cardophilius.
Cardophilius.
The whole entire show hinted that they had a connection, that they were going to meet again, that he was like the main antagonist. And then the whole show climaxes with probably one of the worst endings of a show that I've ever seen. Like, when Bridget and I were watching the last episode, fun fact, we watched it 5 minutes before recording this podcast. The last episode was literally so bad that I was like, I have to bring it up during the technical section, because let me recap what happens at the end. They show up in this Harry Potter meeting Voldemort scene with the big dry fountain, and it's very cloudy. How they got there, like they went through a wall that was apparently a magic portal.
Key.
a port key to somewhere. Okay, wow, this is just Harry Potter.
It's Harry Potter.
Madara Uchiha shows up and saves Cardophilius. Elias eats a fairy and kills but doesn't kill the guy. Then Chisei gives bad guy a hug. He stabs her through the chest in the heart. She spits up blood. We all know she's not dead because the story is not going to end that way, but she gets stabbed through the heart. How they're going to explain that, no idea. Then, all of a sudden, with zero explanation whatsoever, she's totally better. Her arm is back to normal. She gets some water and goes into a well where Cardophilius is sleeping. Guess what? Madara Uchiha's back, and then he just leaves because now they're boring. And that's how the show ends? Come on. That's literally, you could not write a worse ending to this show. And it was the whole point of like the whole story was leading to these two having this thing, and like, anyway, I don't know. Sorry, yeah. I'm ranting at this point, so I'm gonna stop. But I am gonna say, like, I don't think we really gave credit enough to how bad the ending was. And we don't have to go lower the score, but I do want it to be known that, like, if we're gonna give characters a 4, I think we've got to look somewhere else where we can more accurately represent some of the problems with the story and the delivery somehow. That's all I'm going to say. Skylar, I'll let you keep leading it on, but I had to throw that out there.
Delivery is the next section.
Okay, let's throw it in there. But like, I can't let the last 5 episodes just get a free pass, right?
Yeah, I thought that it was, I guess, yeah, maybe we didn't dock it enough, but I thought that what we did with the story is that it was going to be a good, but then it met in the middle because of the bad stuff. But now that you are bringing it up and talking about it, I feel like a 0.5 point wasn't enough to meet it in the middle, you know, because it's like, it could have been a 4, but now it's a 3.5. It almost should be like a 3 or a 2.5 if we're, you know, giving it the weight.
I wouldn't go down that low.
I know, but if we're giving it like the weight that it, you know, if it was that bad of an ending, which I think it was, I feel like just docking it by just a 0.5 of a point isn't,
because the other things we uncovered during our character discussion, it wasn't just the ending of the show, it was the sleigh begging thing. The fact that anytime Chisei was about to die, who shows up? The fairy queen and her Tumnus husband, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was another plot device that we didn't even bring up, but it's in the character section because now we're thinking about the characters. So like, if we want to give characters good, which I think they deserve, I think we need to recognize that those characters were used in ways that really hurt the overall story of the show somehow. I'm not saying we have to go back and lower it. I'm just saying we didn't bring it up in the story section. We're bringing it up here, but I don't think the characters deserve to be brought down. So somewhere else that needs to be represented. Is that fair? Does that make sense? What do you think, Skylar?
It's not a character thing. It's a plot thing. Yeah.
So I'm just going to lock in real quick 4 for the characters.
Yeah.
Just so that's there.
Yeah.
And then I guess for me, like, with all that considered, 3.5 is still the technical rating that I would give it. Because meh is on par with what you would expect from a decent show. It doesn't stand out for being exceptionally good or bad. And so with the points that we've brought up, like, to me, this is on the better side of meh, aka 3.5.
Yes, but
and that includes the bad points.
Oh, I guess for me it was like the meh would be, it's like it would have been a 4, it would have been good, but then the bad stuff would be in the 2 area, so that would even it out to like a 3 or a 2.5 for the story. Maybe not all the way down to a 2.5, but yeah, I'm kind of with Brett where we didn't really think of all of the we didn't articulate all of the bad things until it came up in characters, because then we were thinking about the characters. And so I would be fine with bumping it down another peg in story. But
Like if I'm just reading the rubric, and I I'm not trying to think of like all the discussion we have. The story was sometimes nonsensical, yeah. Inconsistent, yep. Boring, maybe not as much. Confusing, absolutely.
Yep.
Ambiguous, totally. Unoriginal, no, I don't think so. I think it was totally original. And disappointing, yeah, totally. However, the story was often consistent, yeah. Well paced, yeah. Comprehensible, yeah. Consummate, yeah. On point, yeah. Unique, yeah. So like both things are so true.
yeah.
I would go with 3. But we don't have to lower it. I'm just saying after we've had more discussion, I would feel better if it had a 3.
And I guess to me, it was more good than bad.
It was, but the bad stuff was like so important.
It was heavier.
It's like it tips the scales. Because, yeah, the majority of the show, 90% of the show was good, but the 10% had more of a weight to it because it was the ending, and it was like, how the whole thing was supposed to finish.
Yeah, I think if there was like 10 apples worth of good stuff, that's a lot of good stuff. But if there's 7 grapefruits or 5 grapefruits worth of bad stuff, they weigh more, even though there are fewer of them. And so they weigh the same. At least to me.
A confusing analogy, but I understand.
Yeah.
I
Like,
see what you mean.
Okay, let's say that there's 100 grains of rice and like 3 apples. Right? Like the apples are bigger and they weigh more.
Yeah.
Per item, but there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good rice, a lot of little good tidbits, but there's some really big bad stuff.
Yeah. I track with that.
Anyway, we don't have to lower it. I would feel much better giving it a 3, and I think Bridget's on board. However, if we leave it at 3.5, it's 0.5, and I think that's okay. Like it's a good show. So like I don't, I wouldn't want to hurt it, but I think that after our conversation in characters, I think the bad points in characters need to be represented somewhere.
Yeah, I don't agree with the 3, but yeah, if that's what we would do, then it would lower it. So do I change it or no?
It's up to you. I'd say you decide. We've made our points, but you make the final call.
Final call.
Well, the whole idea of the technical is that we arrive at the score.
I mean, 2 out of 3 people think it's a 3, so technically a majority, but I don't want to strong arm us into a decision either.
Ticked down.
All right, we were
All right,
getting along
and-
too well.
We agreed on too much.
Delivery, translation, voice acting, sub and dub, script, edit. 1. Terrible. The delivery is frequently cheesy, unbalanced, inappropriate, incoherent, and bland. Whereas 5. The delivery is always believable, balanced, genuine, understandable, elevating, and enriching. So you guys said you just finished it. Did you even look at the English dub, or did you just go straight through subs?
I didn't watch any dub.
I actually didn't watch any dub this time, and I almost always do, so...
So we can't really comment on that, but I will say that I did notice that there were dubs in multiple languages.
Yeah, French, German,
Wow.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so there's a lot of dubs on this one.
I will say that the script, I think, was really good. Like, especially those moments that we talked about.
Oh, yeah,
That's a script thing, and I think it was really good.
totally.
Okay.
I think the voice
script
acting
was
was pretty
good.
good, too.
I agree.
I wouldn't say it was, like, amazing, but it was good.
I think Chisei's character was... I always appreciate when a female anime character sounds more realistic
Yeah.
than Onicha. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed her voice actor, and I think that it was really interesting that her character was so emotionally broken that she
Yeah.
did not get to show emotion except for the few times she did, and it really stood out.
Yeah.
Elias's character too, like they were both just very unemotional people because they didn't understand emotions until they did. But when they used those emotions, well, she say, oh, Elias never showed emotion, which is another feat in and of itself, I think, for a voice actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
as a voice actor.
Yeah. So I think the voice acting was on par with what you'd expect, but I think the script itself was exceptional. Like elevating to an exponential degree.
Yeah.
And then I guess to bring up the edit, the thing that drags down delivery.
What do you think, Skylar? What do you think of the edit?
Unfortunately, it's been too long for me to remember all of the editing points and how they cut together exactly like that. But I guess for me, kind of as mentioned earlier, I think it was just the curse of being forced into a certain number of episodes that just caused them a disservice, and they just had to chop things where it just wasn't a good place to chop it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there were some parts that I feel like they spent a weird amount of time on. Like, one that comes to mind because we just watched it was in the episode where Elias goes off to kidnap Stella to make her the sacrifice, but first he goes by, like, the sorcery library first. And there was, like, a 5-minute montage of just music with their mouths moving, but, like, it could have been, like, 30-second song and you would have understood what the point was. But it was, like, so long. I was so confused with the whole thing because I was like, I get what's going on, but why is it so long? And they're not showing what they're saying. It's just music, but then they're showing, like, the whole entire sequence, but without them talking. So there were certain points like that where it was, like, a long montage that was, like, way longer than it should have been. It had a couple of those throughout the show, which I felt like they could have definitely used the time more wisely with something else, you know.
I do agree with that. And again, where it's been a long time, I don't remember the exact episode.
Yeah.
But I do remember that there were a few times where, like, it would focus on his back for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And, like,
Yeah.
as a part of it, I actually went down into the comments to be like, wait, was there something I was supposed to get there? Was there something I missed?
Yeah.
And everyone else in the comments was like, why did it focus on his back for that long? Like, am I missing something? What's going on with his back?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it had
there
a lot
were
of
some of those.
A good amount of them to be noticeable. So I would say that would be, you know, something to knock it. Because it was, enough for it to be like, what the heck?
Yeah,
All right.
and that is definitely an edit knock, not a pacing knock.
Yep.
You ready for me to say something mind-blowing?
Yes.
I propose a 4.5
Oh?
for delivery. Here's why. Okay, so we went back to story and we lowered it by half a point. And so lowering a score by half a point. Sorry, one sec. We can cut this part out in post. Sorry, Skylar.
Yeah.
It is at 129.
I'll find it. Because I had, like, my little bumble in the beginning too.
Maybe we can edit that out. Jason
Yep.
got home again.
129.
Like in the Violet Evergarden episode, he got home and then the dogs went crazy.
Well, I'm not going to have to work on that one anymore.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Okay, now should we do another clap to signify
No,
getting back?
No,
it's still recording.
It's still
just
the same
trimming.
time.
Okay, we'll
Okay.
just take this part out. Okay.
Okay. So I said I'm gonna propose a 4.5.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
I'm saying I'm proposing a 4.5 because we went back to story and removed half a point. And it could have been a 3.5, could have been a 3. We kind of went down to a 3, despite one person feeling not to. It's going to shock people. I think delivery deserves to be so high, partially because maybe we bump delivery. Okay, let me just say this. The script of this show was so exceptional. I think it deserves to stand head and shoulders above other shows. Even though the edit had some bad parts, maybe we account for the bad parts of edit by part of that 0.5 we took away from story, and we say that the voice acting and the script specifically get big points. The script specifically gets big points for being like truly elevated compared to other shows. And we just lump in the bad edit points into the 0.5 we took away from story. That's my proposal for 4.5. What do you guys think?
That's so much math. It's a lot of math. I think that the script was really awesome. I don't think that it's like, it had a lot of awesome moments. It wasn't awesome from start to finish, like say you would say
Steins Gate.
Yeah. Like I think that it had really good moments, but it was like every few episodes, if that. So I wouldn't say that much.
Okay.
I can track with a 4.5 in delivery, but the other reason that I would give that is more just based off of your reaction in general to this, Brett, because the fact that you were able to sit through a slice of life means that they delivered it in such a way that you're like, okay, I can actually palate this.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I hadn't thought about that. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah,
It didn't seem very slice of lifey to me most of the time. Like there were
But
some
it
episodes.
is.
I know,
It
but it's
definitely
like
was.
weird that it's categorized as that, because there's some episodes where it is, but there's definitely like a plot. You know, I don't know.
Well, so I've seen a lot of, and slice of life is one of my favorite genres. This is probably why I enjoy this as much as I did.
Yeah.
But one of the characteristic things of a slice of life is how slow it is.
Yeah.
And this definitely does hit that. But the converse, or like the weird thing about slice of life, is that even though nothing is happening, nothing can't actually be happening. Otherwise, it is genuinely boring, even for slice of life, and you stop watching. It's just the level to which you're able to tolerate it. And that's where I'm saying that for this show, they did enough and they delivered it in such a way that they did do a really good job on that front.
Okay.
To Bridget's point, maybe a 4.5 is a little high. I was kind of going for shock value, but I think a 4 is absolutely deserving.
Yeah.
If not a 4.5, I think a 4 is totally where this should be at.
Yeah. I think a 4.
I'm between a 4 and a 4.5, but because basically the only thing that we have the big issue with is the edit.
Yes.
And the voice acting was just decent. It wasn't like
Yeah, it was
great.
decent.
We're just saying, how much does the script hold up the whole score?
And where it was only like certain moments that were really, really good, I wouldn't
True.
say that it holds up a whole score.
That's true. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I definitely wouldn't
Yeah.
say like every episode was an absolute banger.
Yeah.
Like there were some
Yeah.
really great script moments
Yeah.
in many episodes, but it wasn't like the whole thing was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, I'd be comfortable with a 4.
Cool.
All right. Cool.
All right, locking it in,
Ooh.
which gives us a final rating of 7.5,
Ooh, that's my
which
enjoyment
is
rating, too.
respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, let me tell you where that puts us with our scores here. So a 7.5 on a technical realm puts it kind of in the bottom half of our podcast episodes. It puts it, however, in pretty good territory. It puts it within the territory of To Your Eternity, Mob Psycho 100, and just above Grimgar Ashes and Illusions, which, by the way, Grimgar got a 4, 4, 4, and then 2.5 for delivery. Jujutsu Kaisen got a 7. So we've ranked it a little bit higher than that. We've ranked it a little bit lower technically than Cowboy Bebop, Haikyuu, Toradora, and Rascal Does Not Dream Bunny Girl Senpai.
Yep.
So I think it's in
That's fair.
great company
Yeah.
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
those
sure.
shows, truly.
Yeah.
Yep. Our poor slime is sitting at the bottom of the heap, technically.
Deserved.
Yep, 5.5. We just haven't reviewed any truly bad anime on this podcast.
No.
If you really want us to do a bad one, leave a comment, but unless you beg for it, we're going to keep doing at least semi-decent shows.
Yeah. Yeah. Although one of these days we might have one that's just a 3 across the board. Maybe.
Yeah, we could find one. We were close with a couple of them. Golden Time was close. 3.34, 3.5. What's the closest one we've had? I think the closest 3 across the board we've had was Golden Time, actually.
Fun.
Jujutsu Kaisen is a 4, 3, 3.5, 3.5.
Yeah. All right, what's next, Sky?
All right. So up next, it is now time for recommendations and comparisons. So we're going to hand it over to Bridget first.
Speak to me.
She will get the first call on recommending a show, and then it will go Brett and then myself.
All right. I'm going to give, if you liked watching Ancient Magus Bride, you should watch Spice and Wolf. Is that what you were going to say, Brett?
Oh, yeah, the recorder gave it away for sure.
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah, if you want to hear some more bad recorder, you should. But also, it is also a slice of lifey, romance-y,
Slow.
very nice vibes. Very good, whimsical, spooky, fall, mystical vibes of a show that I really enjoyed watching. And I also enjoyed those things for Ancient Magus Bride as well. So if you liked all that stuff, then you'll like Spice and Wolf.
Sweet. All right, I already said Kino's Journey, The Beautiful World earlier, so I'm not going to waste my recommendation on that. I'll just call back to that moment in the episode. I will actually recommend Violet Evergarden.
Well, there goes my 2.
Oh no! Look what you've done.
Violet Evergarden, definitely. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's a very character-driven story, episodic story. It's actually the highest art rating we have ever given on this podcast, tied with Demon Slayer. So definitely, if you just want to see something that's a complete masterpiece, Violet Evergarden.
All right. Well, my 2 got sniped in one swoop again.
You could recommend
So-
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
No, what I was going to actually recommend is Howl's Moving Castle.
Ah.
And so this is a Studio Ghibli movie. But this one has a lot of similar like soft magic systems and just some weird, interesting stuff going on between the main characters. So if you liked The Ancient Magus Bride, go check out Howl's Moving Castle, the Ghibli film.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back to Bridget.
I'll throw another one out there. I'm gonna say it's not super related, but kind of is. The Faraway Paladin, which is an isekai. Wait, kinda.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very unique. It's a unique kind of isekai, and it has magic in it, and he's kind of like a mage-ish. He's a paladin, so he's like a religious mage. I don't know. I liked it. I thought that it was a nice moving show. I also gave it a 7.5 actually, which is the same that I gave this one. So I don't know. I liked it. It had a lot of cool things going on in it, and it kind of fit the same kind of vein in a weird way. I don't know. It was a nice show.
All right.
Very nice.
I will recommend Wolf Children. So kind of that fantasy vibe. You've got someone caring for, like, it's a very character-driven story. Yeah, I'll say Wolf Children. Also, the art is very, very pretty. Kind of got a lot of country vibes. So, Wolf Children.
This is going to be an interesting recommendation. It's another movie, but it's called Starlight Promises. And essentially, it has to do with this person letting go of essentially like a relationship that ended in a bad way, where they've kind of like deluded themselves into thinking it's something else and then coming to closure over that. So it's an interesting recommendation. I'll say it right now, but Starlight Promises.
All right.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to get true recommendations for this one because it's so unique. So I feel like that kind of lends itself to the uniqueness. Yeah. I don't really have any more. So
I have a couple. First one is going to be Snow White with the red hair. It is much more of a romance than Ancient Magus Bride. It is a very highly rated romance. So Snow White with the red hair. And then, can I do one more, Skylar?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. And then I'm going to say Yona of the Dawn. Yona of the Dawn is like cool, actiony, romancy. So those are the two I'm going to say. Yona of the Dawn and Snow White with the red hair.
Sweet. Yeah, I don't have any other recommendations, actually, so.
Wait, one more. Natsume's Book of
for it.
Friends. That's the last one. Natsume's Book of Friends. Okay.
All right. So, thank you for joining us. Next week, I believe we are going to be covering the final episode of the season. And that final episode is going to be Full Metal Alchemist.
Brotherhood.
And, yeah, we're specifically going to be talking about Brotherhood, but I will be bringing up the other original Full Metal Alchemist series. So both will kind of be covered in there. So you have something to look forward to next week.
so good.
That is the season finale, and that will do it for season 2. So just a reminder for everyone,
Indeed.
you can go to our website, 310anime.com, and you can find on our seasons tab our calendar for when we come out with new seasons. So if you navigate over there, again, that's 310anime.com, 310anime.com, you'll see that we release a new season every January and July. So we're going to say farewell to you after next week for the holiday season, so you can enjoy your Christmas and watch a bunch of anime, and then join us again in January when we come out with season 3 of 3 out of 10 anime. It's going to be a banger.
Indeed. So yeah, come check us out and even watch some of the other shows that we've covered on some of the ones that we might have recommended. So thank you again for listening, and until next time, see ya.
Jane!
Bye.
雲の水筒かの枝に紡ぐ
日頃